Hello, and welcome again to the Scope Stack podcast. This is John Scott. I'll be your host today. Again, if you don't know much about Scope Stack, brief introduction. We're a scoping and pricing platform for IT services providers. And so if you're used to using spreadsheets and Word templates, no more, because you can use Scope Stack instead. So with that, I'm pleased to have Jonathan Philipsen, EVP of Cloud Strategy over at Thrive, join us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining in the studio.
Glad to be here.
Good to have a local Greenville person here.
That's right. Came all the way. all 3 miles over from my house to right here.
Look, I appreciate it either way. Having a good year so far?
So far is great. I mean, we're 9 days into it. And
you've already hit your number for the year.
Quota's done. Quota's done. We're just
going to the beach.
Smooth sailing.
Yes.
It's exactly the conversation I had this morning with a couple of the crews.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there you go. Well, look, I know you've been in and around the MSP industry for a while now. I'm not going to say how long, but you really do have a pulse on the industry. And again, you've been talking to MSPs just nonstop for the past many a year, right? So I want to get your opinion on like what's coming in 2023. Right. What do you see as the big things that, whether it's you at Thrive or just that you're seeing personally, like just in the industry, and how can we prepare MSPs and other IT service providers to get in front of it?
Sure. Well, I think, at the top of the list in any organization that I talk to or any peer group that I'm in front of, you always hear the question of, well, how do I find new talent in this day and age? I mean, how do I keep talent, right? I mean, so the whole concept of recruiting and retaining comes to mind. That's huge. I don't care whether it's 2022, but 2023, I think that a lot of forces are at work here, which a lot of the managed services community will have to figure out. How do we keep a hold of good talent? Right. Obviously, with a big fluid job market in a work from anywhere world, that's huge, which kind of leads me right into probably what the number 2 is. And I would say, how do we securely wrap a bow around all things wherever they are these days? So cybersecurity is obviously huge.
Oh, sure.
And the conversation that I was just having earlier today is, how do we stay more efficient? How do we maximize the client experience? Right? Through automation or artificial intelligence, right? The world of machines. But
it's a hot topic right now.
Hot topic. And how do we learn from it? How do we learn from it? And then obviously living in my world, I'm over the cyber strategy at Thrive, right? Well, how do end users benefit from living in what is now what we call the multi-cloud experience, right? I think that the days of hitching your wagon to one platform and burying your head in the sand and saying, hey, we've just done it, they're probably coming to a close. So multi-cloud is huge. And, obviously I think that, lastly, the working from anywhere, blending back to cyber, but more importantly, like how do we provide that client, the client experience, the employee experience at the same time? How do we securely monitor, manage, and just maintain it? Yeah,
I mean those are all huge topics. That are all like podcasts in themselves.
That's right. We can do a couple of them.
Yeah, we'll just do it all. But let's start with the people part. Right?
Sure.
So I mean, I think what you're seeing in the news and just big tech layoffs, overcapitalization from VCs, and just all this crazy stuff is leading to, unfortunately, people having to change jobs or being let go. And so there's a massive market out there for technical user or technical employees potentially, right? And so like, do you feel like those big tech layoffs does that impact the MSP space and the channel, or is that like a different kind of person in your opinion?
I think it depends. I think if we're talking about the big layoffs from some of these large, very social type names that we see on the news, I don't know whether I may need a DevOps person in my MSP. However, I think there's plenty of talent that's going to flood the marketplace that the managed services community could potentially capitalize on. I think that the type of worker that is in the market of today may look a little different. They probably have got some very good technical chops, and they may want to adjust back to a managed services company that supports the small to mid-sized business and is looking through the eyes of maybe a smaller employer these days.
That's true. I mean, we've been interviewing and hiring, and I think the important thing for us to like where we start is, do they align with our corporate values, right? Do from a personality standpoint, from them just living it out, do they align with that? Like that's our first stop. And then it's okay, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do this position, right? And so all around aligning to values, aligning to the right seat. And like really that is, if you go through that, it's not rocket science, but it's super important to understand, like, will they fit with your business?
Correct. The one common question that I love to ask groups, especially the peer groups that are always trying to figure out what does good look like for them, is I ask the question, what keeps you up at night? And the number one response, cyber is a thing. I'd probably put that as a 1.A versus behind the one, but the number one is employees. And it's how do we recruit, and more importantly, and to your point, how do we retain those employees by creating a culture that people want to live in and be in? And I read something recently, and I thought it just held true, and I shared it with a couple of my buddies that own managed services companies. When we recruit a client, or whether it's a client or that potential employee that comes in to work for us, the one thing that resonates is the job that I wanted to take was written in a way, and once I'm here, I'm doing something a little bit differently. So I think that if the managed services world is posting for a position and we can clearly document what that job function looks like, is key, because there is a startling statistic that says that X amount of employees will leave within 6 months because the job that they thought they were taking was what was actually there.
Yeah. You don't want to bait and switch them?
You don't want to bait and switch them. That's right.
Oh, man.
So
Good to know.
We hired you as a senior network engineer only to come in and look at alerts, right?
Yeah.
No.
No bueno.
And no bueno. So that's key. And I think that there's more to just taking the job these days than the proverbial salary.
Yeah.
Right? Salaries are great, but the benefits are there. That's all a piece what everybody else is offering. But I think people need to understand, what else is there? What does my roadmap look like once I get into the job?
Yeah. Well, I think something you mentioned a second ago is around, going from a large organization to a small organization. Some people find that very appealing and want to be a part of that and want to be from the ground up and building that. And so you just have to understand where you are
absolutely
as an MSP or any type of organization to know that, right? And is this person the one that we can go to the next level with? Can we build them? Can we, develop them as an employee and with skill set? Because I think if you have the outlook of this is not their end all be all job, we want to help them, right? We want to help them develop and all that, and just having a good outlook on it. But
well, and I think that if you can message to them early into the process, it won't waste their time nor yours if it's just not a fit.
Yeah.
And then communication, after they're in-house, communication's key. And I think every good culture proactively communicates what's good, what potentially adversities the business is faced with, and, ask the question to all the employees, are we rowing in the same direction?
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to make this awesome segue. So why would I hire anyone if I could just get ChatGPT to do their job?
Right.
Right. That's what everyone's saying. It's going to change everything.
I know.
So kind of get into AI and just all that stuff.
Right.
That's the commercialized version of it. That's been out there for a long time.
Sure.
But where do you see all this kind of playing out?
So it's a mixture between humans and machines, right?
Yes.
Is the artificial intelligence and all of this machine things, as I'll call it, they're supposed to make everybody's lives easier. You still have to deploy it, right?
Yeah. When you have to know what you're trying to solve.
Correct.
You can't just do RPA without having defined the process.
100%.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you think about why companies are gravitating towards this artificial intelligence and what's in it for me, it really is what's in it for the end user. If we're trying to create a best in breed, best in class, customer experience, and at the same time relieve a little bit of the burden off of the employees, I think we've done our jobs. But the employee still needs to be there to coincide with that, because tangibly, there still are customers on the other end of it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. And I think, you hit the nail on the head with just the client experience. That has to be our filter.
Right.
Oh, God, sorry.
Easy.
Just hit the microphone. That has to be our filter of client experience. And you're right. When we talk about building, scope stack, when I talk to other service providers, they're how can we, when the clients come to our website, how can they get an estimate for what's going to take to do something,
right?
365 migration or whatever. And it is all oriented around just making it easy for them which hopefully makes it easy for other people in the back end, right? And like if you're doing it right, there's some true like transformation that could happen from there. So where are you seeing like who's kind of leading the way around AI, RPA, some of that stuff? Are you seeing any leaders in the space right now that people need to be aware of?
Well, I think, one that we all need to think through is PIA. I don't know everything about them, but they're doing great things in the market. They're doing great things from an advocacy perspective. And I think that's the point, is it's advocacy, right? Yeah. And then obviously the proof's in the pudding, devil's in the details, so to speak. It has to do what it needs to do. But at the end of the day, if you take the experience and you do create a better customer just evolution with the end users, and then your internal clients, the employees, are the beneficiaries of that, I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I was just talking to those guys like a month ago. So I think there's definitely some alignment around kind of what we're doing, what they're doing. But
and the other thing, like from a support perspective, I think we get out of our own way of just kind of closing tickets, right? I closed the ticket again. Well, that's great, but have we looked at the root cause of these tickets? Yeah. There's a lot of cool companies that are coming up to help us correlate the data. Yep. And make it meaningful for the MSP owner, which translates back to the client, right?
Yeah, I think the world of data and grabbing insights from that data is huge, is equally huge.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think about just our small world in itself. There's a ton of data that goes into scoping, pricing a project that is just there. Like, how do you make some meaningful insights out of that? So that's something that we're definitely aware of. But all right, so. I actually want to hit cybersecurity last because I think it's kind of the thing that encompasses it all, or it should be a part of that. All right, so multi-cloud, hybrid cloud world.
Sure.
It seems like it's easier today to live in that world, but I think there's always room for improvement.
Always. Always.
And so what do we need to be aware of in that arena?
Well, I think from just an observation perspective, living in 2023, we clearly know that there's multiple cloud providers, there's multiple platforms that do different things, and so you can pick and choose to have multiple vendors, for lack of a better term, supporting your workloads. Yep. Of which comes with some challenges. You have to have a different talent pool within your team. Yep. To support those different platforms. So if I'm a small to mid-sized business, I may have my Office 365 that could be my Active Directory services. It may be my mail. It could be my SharePoint for my office. And then the question becomes, what do I do with the rest of my servers? I have the choice to use Azure, or maybe I use those in a native cloud provider format. So administratively, you either need to have a console that looks at all the things cloud, or a person of skill set that can manage and administer.
I was going to say, are you seeing any kind of orchestration platforms that layer on top of these multi-cloud environments that are working well that you've seen out there?
Funny you should say that.
That was not even I didn't even know you had a great answer for this.
No, that's all right. That's all right. So we at Thrive, we actually administer Amazon. We have the ability to manage Azure as well as our own private cloud stacks, all through a single pane of glass.
Awesome.
So we refer to it as hybrid cloud director. Okay. But I mean, just think of eyes on glass, being able to administer workloads in different models. Yeah. And then obviously, there are folks that are beneficiaries or are the beneficiaries of this multi-cloud world that we're living in these days that may have an application that needs to be closer to certain people. So you can obviously build that application in a closer data center than maybe the majority of your other production stacks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, we use a platform called Cloud 66, and it's really all around like the application, our application, and where do we want it to sit, right? Stand up new servers and things like that. And so, I think it's a little bit different use case than kind of what you were talking about and some of the administration pieces, but that's been a big deal for us, just to say, hey, we need to stand up a new application instance in this data center on this cloud instance. It could be GCP or Azure or whatever. So there's some cool stuff out there to do that.
It's very cool. And I would also, argue that when picking a multi-cloud kind of instance, think through the applications and where things need to sit for the best experience, which that leads back to the human person assessing where the workloads need to go. Yeah,
I was going to say that. So when I used to work at some of these other integrators, it was very much, you're right. I mean, let's do some application interdependency mapping, because you don't want, if there's this, very critical interdependency, you don't want it sitting on the other side of the world.
No.
Because delay, causes all sorts of problems.
Well, and heaven forbid you live in a world that has IBM as well as Windows workloads.
Yeah.
You kind of need to shrink the latency that the dependencies of both environments need and rely on each other.
Oh, yeah, 100%. All right, cool. We're making good progress here. Work from anywhere, IoT, edge computing. Unpack that one for me.
Okay, so if anybody hasn't observed what's happening over the past, call it 3 years, the work from anywhere, that's like here to stay. And it's crazy. The efficiencies that are driven from people working at home also come with some headaches. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know how many hours people are working more than probably what they once did while at the office.
Yeah.
But if you think of, and this is where security will kind of come around, if you think about the overworked potential employee, maybe they have like their proverbial eye is off the ball, or it's shifted a little bit from clicking around on certain things on their computer that maybe they shouldn't, right? So they're a little tired, they're worn down. Friday at 4:45, an email comes through that they click on. Oh, bad, so sad, right? So from the Internet of Things, from the edge, from working from anywhere, it kind of all ties back to the security posture, which needs to be multifaceted in this day and age. And I don't think any service provider, any managed services provider can say we've got it all handled.
Yeah. Would you say like the work from anywhere theme is almost table stakes when you're interviewing? Like people just expect that now, right?
Right.
I mean, and I think it goes back to the very first one, which is, if my team can truly work from anywhere, I can hire from anywhere, and they can sit anywhere
and go anywhere.
I mean, there are. You mentioned this from a technical standpoint, but there are a lot of things to consider when you start hiring people in different states. Like from just a business standpoint, right? It's not as easy as just I want that person in Texas. Well, you have to pay Texas unemployment. You have to do all, so there are things that you need to consider as a business, but from a technical standpoint, you're right. I mean, it's here to stay, and like
it's wide open.
Even more of a reason for security.
I know plenty of very tier 3-ish type infrastructure team members and dev people that they live in national parks in their Sprinter vans, right?
Yes.
And that is one of the things that they hold in highest regard. They want to work from anywhere. And I think 5, 10, definitely 15 years ago, that wasn't an option.
No, I mean, I would love to live in a Sprinter van.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
I always see those like, that's whether on social media or just like the Sprinter vans, the 4x4, like
living in the van.
Oh my God, I want that.
Well, you need that.
Well, I could take my kids to school and just work from the parking lot.
That's not as fun.
I'll look at a tree. I could maybe find a tree.
It's true. That's
true.
Under. But I think it comes down to quality of life for those individuals. And I think that living in parity with the employer, they need to also understand that, like, yes, you can do that, but here's what we expect. The output needs to be there. And then when there are calls, Zoom calls, team calls, whatever the case may be, show up.
You got to be there.
Got to be there.
Yeah. All right. So cybersecurity in that vein, and really just all the things that we're talking about. I mean, there's education, right? Oh, there's like the practical, like continuous education. So when you're burnt out at 4:00, you don't click on that really appealing email with a link to it, causing all sorts of havoc. So,
and I think with all the havoc, there comes some opportunity, right? Not just for the bad actors, but for all the folks that are on the good side of the equation, not just promoting advocacy, but also like I'll pick on phishing awareness, right? I think that there are so many players that are in that space alone these days that, years ago there's probably one to two. Yeah. And now they're all pushing each other to be better in that space. But like the cyber conversation, that could be a whole podcast in itself. What I'd say is that I'm starting to observe managed services companies that have adopted a manner in which they used to choose technology. Now they're asking harder questions to the vendors that they use. Yeah. Because they not only expect them to be better, they have to be better.
Yeah. I mean, that MSP is on the hook just as much as that vendor's on the hook, right?
And there's more third-party interaction at every layer, which brings me to, everybody needs to have multiple layers of depth with someone looking over their shoulders at any given time. There's no doubt.
How do you? What's your take on? I mean, we've been talking about cybersecurity for a long time. I mean, you're right. I mean, the advocacy piece has definitely escalated, and there's more awareness of it. How do you kind of see through it all? And like, okay, what's the thing I need to focus on? Like, any guidance just on?
So that's a tough question,
right?
But what I would say is do something. right? The choice. Start. Pick a framework and start. You know, pick the CIS 18. Go NIST. Go something and start there from a fundamental. Just blocking and tackling like proverbially, but start there and then. Don't be afraid to admit that you're not the smartest person in the room.
Oh, 100%.
Partner with someone that you can look up to as that mentor in the space that, can look over your shoulder. And then what checks and balances are you putting on that individual too?
Yeah. Just go talk to Matt Lee, right?
Just talk to Matt. Make sure Matt gets his beard back too.
Yes, exactly.
Which I think it's growing back.
Well, I'm happy for him.
It would take me years to grow that back.
Oh man, I could never. It's so funny seeing those guys with their beards.
Oh, it was awesome. It was awesome.
I mean, what a great thing in general, but just looking at them without beards, and then you look at a social post on the week later, and they almost have half of it back. I'm like, how do you? Manlier than we are, I guess.
They are 100%. Look at you got Farling from MSP Insights.
Yeah.
You got Matt Lee. Yes, they got better beard genes than what I'd ever imagine having.
Yes, they do. All right, so let's kind of wrap it up.
Sure.
Some practical stuff, practical advice that you would give anyone kind of going into 2023. What are one or two things that you'd have them focus on?
Yeah, a couple things. Number one at the top of it, just make sure that from a cybersecurity just perspective, you're not running from it, you're running towards it. You're trying to head off whatever we may be facing. Verify and vet the vendors that you've chosen, maybe whether it's 6 months ago, a year ago, or you're looking at today. I think that some extra checks and balances need to be had these days when picking any vendor.
Sure.
But on the security side, 100%, because we're all easy targets.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right. So
cyber definitely. Culturally, I think that we may have an opportunity during this quote unquote the Great Recession as people are potentially getting laid off to go attract talent.
Yeah.
Make sure that the talent that we're hiring is collaborative with the team that you already have, because you've built a company that's
got to fit.
They got to fit. So you can't have the unicorn that comes in and wreaks havoc and makes his or her own personal sandbox.
That's not a good fit.
Not a good fit. And so I think culturally we owe it to not only that prospective employee but the rest of our employers. So, but retaining and culturally, obviously that kind of wraps itself around leading with a security mind approach first to protect your clients, your employees, and take advantage of some of these cool new, artificial intelligent technology companies that are up and coming. Yeah, because they're
some cool stuff, and
very cool.
You got to be aware of it, right?
Absolutely,
I think.
And like we were talking earlier, those who don't agree with it and have the people that are just closing tickets, they potentially are going to get left behind if they don't start the adoption curve. Yeah, if they haven't already.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. So you had some big changes into last year, going into this year, moving over to Thrive.
That's right.
Tell us if anyone wants to kind of reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing at Thrive, or just these kind of topics in general. What's the best way to reach out to you?
Absolutely. Feel free to drop me an email, jphilipsen@thrivenetworks.com. You can obviously go to the website. But you're right. A lot of changes. So, for the past 9+ years, I was at a cloud provider.
Yep.
And then obviously Thrive is a very large outsourced IT consulting firm that focuses on cloud adoption as well as cyber adoption. So fundamentally that's at the core. And so it was pretty awesome to come join a team where I could lead the cloud strategy and not just see things by way of a vendor, but I could see through the eyes of the end user and give them the best client experience.
Yeah, it's cool, right? Yeah. Being on having left a VAR where I couldn't talk to any other VARs,
right? Technically,
to step out and be able to have conversations with them and have a better understanding on the industry it's cool.
It is very cool.
Well, again, man, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Being here. I'm sure if you're one of our highest ranked podcasts, we'll love to have you back.
100%. Yeah. I cannot wait to see the riveting, just come on by the droves.
Billions of subscribers from this one for
you
sure.
threw Matt Lee's name out there, so it's bound to get something.
We got to tag him now.
Picking on beards.
Picking on beards.
That's right.
That's the name of our episode. Well, cool, man. Well, I do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And if you haven't subscribed to our podcast, go to scopestack.io/podcast. It's on all the channels, all the flavors that you want. And again, if you're interested in learning more about ScopeStack, you can go to scopestack.io. We have a free account, free sandbox account that you can sign up for, kick the tires on that, and just learn some more. So again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you out there.